marketing for this event, when we were talking about this event, and now when we were just introducing it. So I would really like to discuss with you, what is body liberation? This was a question we posed to our participants, but I would like to get some insight on why are we discussing body liberation instead of body positivity, and why is that our focus today?
Firstly, I just want to warn everyone, I don't have anything against body positivity before the whole world starts coming towards me. Body positivity still has its place, but I think over time, its focus on social media and everywhere has kind of become about achieving personal body love, where there's nothing wrong with that. But what I've come to realize, though, is that asking someone to achieve body love can quickly become another unattainable prerequisite, much like the desire to change our bodies. And so it's still focusing so much on beauty and body obsession, whereas body liberation is really using a social justice lens to look at bodies and body politics. It's a little more nuanced, and it looks at forms of bias and prejudice that impact the body, and the fact that those can be structural, systematic, interpersonal, and internalized. So for example, things like looking at bodies, and body liberation and body image, not only individually, but also looking at it through the lens of racism, colorism, ableism, sizeism, fat phobia. Removing this from the discussion does a disservice to the work each of us are doing. And like I said, we don't need to abandon body positivity, but it does mean that we need to challenge the systems that oppress our bodies. And to do that, we'll have to understand what those systems are. So I think something that I just want to say about body liberation is essentially, like, every time you call truce with your body, you interrupt a system of violence that profits off your self-hate. And every time you interrogate the beliefs and biases that you have about other people's bodies, you again interrupt a system that profits off the way you feel about those bodies and the systems of comparison that we live in. So I think this idea of looking at all of these issues through a social justice lens, and also continually doing the work you're doing on yourself, as well as challenging your biases, is our way towards actual body freedom and liberation.
Great, thank you so much, Impera, for that introduction on this topic. And it's so interesting to hear about those intersecting realities that play out in our discussion about body liberation. And I'm excited to explore this more throughout our discussion today. Just as some background for all of our participants here, I was wondering if you could explain to us a little bit more about your own work in body liberation.
So I've actually been a comprehensive sexuality education facilitator, and I've done workshops in schools and working in the area of sexual and reproductive health. We talk about our bodies day in and day out, and I felt like there was still something missing. And what was missing was this lens to look at other issues of body image. And essentially through that, I kind of decided to launch the Unmute Files, which is an online community, like Evelyn had explained. We do podcasts, we have different women across South Asia come on board and really discuss some of their body journeys. And it's almost like a place for building solidarity and building space to listen and grow. I also do body liberation workshops. And really those workshops are around understanding what do you mean by radical body acceptance, understanding our body privileges, understanding these oppressions that I'm talking about, understanding how the global corporate body shame agenda works, understanding our biases, and really then figuring out tools that work for us and through vulnerability, and really how do we process some of that shame. I'm actually doing a workshop with the Hear My Voice team next week, and I hope we'll collaborate further as well. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Amira. Yeah, it's really great to hear about the work that you're doing in this area and the different forms that this work can take. My next question for you is a little bit more about the Unmute Files in your podcast and why you chose to develop the Unmute Files as a podcast and choose to put forward this discussion in such an online platform in such a big space.
Yeah. I think the body oppressions I'm talking about, I think one of them, especially in South Asia, especially with women, is the silence that surrounds our bodies and the lack of access and information and just the lack of space to speak and hear and feel. And I think the Unmute Files was just that, giving people a space to talk about their bodies in their own voices without having policymakers and other people speak for them. And really finding a way that people can actually use their own bodies to heal and heal others and use their bodies as a tool for activism. The minute you talk about what you've gone through and how you've been, it's such a freeing, vulnerable feeling. Like there's a lot of healing that happens in that process. And I think personally, some of the body image issues I had been going through my entire life, I feel like the silence only aggravated them. And I kind of wanted to break that system of silence.
And we are so glad that you are. And thank you again for sharing about your journey with the Unmute Files and how you have developed that and using bodies as a tool for activism, which I think is such an important intention. And it actually transitions us now into speaking to our other two lovely panelists with us today. As I mentioned, we have Libby, Nambo, and Florence Conor who are joining us to talk about body liberation today. Libby is a Kenyan musician who shares about her love for God, people, her country, and what she does through her art. She is a singer, songwriter, actor, voiceover artist, and music teacher. In addition to performing, Libby is a digital strategy consultant with a background in electron media. Her debut single, Rise Again, was released in 2019 and was part of an online anti-rape campaign. We also have Florence joining us today. Flo has always been passionate about justice, and she started her engagement for women's rights and refugees a few years ago. Today, she works in the field of international relations and closely follows the developments in this field to help push forwards towards progress. She's a member of the Luxembourg Association for the United Nations and regularly publishes articles and co-organizes seminars related to development and the UN coordinated COVID-19 response. So thank you so much, Flo and Libby, for being with us today.
You're welcome. We're happy to be here.
Thank you, Evelyn.
So to start with our discussion, just leading off of what Mira was saying and using bodies as a tool for activism, I'd love to ask you about the making of Perfect Imperfections, which is the other reason we're holding this event today. Flo, could you please explain to us how this song was made and your development process with Libby?
Hi, yeah, thank you, Evelyn. So Libby and I were part of the fourth batch of Hear My Voice. We started this in the end of last summer, and Hear My Voice is a program that goes over several weeks, and every week we were discussing a thematic, like an important theme for women and women's rights to understand better what our challenges are and how we can go against them. And 1 week we were discussing stereotypes and body image, and we were tasked with doing a creative, either an art form or anything that would come to our mind in order to what represents body image for us. And it relates perfectly to today's theme, body liberation, as well. And Libby, since you've introduced her, I don't need to anymore, but she's an amazing singer. And I love to write, also poetry, and for myself mostly, but we discovered that that was a really good match. And I think we spent about 2 or 3 phone sessions just discussing what it meant to us. And we got into very interesting thematics. We were talking about safety in relation to body image, but also judgments, and how we constantly seem to want to attain a standard that's, one, changing all the time, and 2, not the same for anyone on this planet. So we kind of discussed and got together, and I sent Libby some of my thoughts in writing, and she transformed it in the beautiful song that it is today with her musical gift. So I'm very honored and very thankful to everyone involved, also Lauren and you, Evelyn, to have given us this opportunity. And to share a funny anecdote to maybe clarify how this collaboration actually materialized. Libby would send me voice notes of how she would sing it, a cappella in the morning before she had coffee. And we would just, I was coming back from the gym, or, time differences, and I would send her a video back, how I would sing it and so on. And it was really a very, very beautiful process, and I'm excited to share it with you today.
Thank you so much, Flo, for sharing us into that side of the creation of the song. And it's just so wonderful to hear how you and Libby were able to work on this song together across the world during this time, and share that process. So thank you so much. I would like to open up to Flo, either you or Libby, about what Amira had said about the idea of bodies as tools for activism. Is that an intention that resonates with you, or something that you can connect with? Or what has your relationship been with using your body in the space of creating art as a tool for activism?
I think I can add something to that. I think one of the things that was extremely challenging for us is, how do we speak about body image issues or body liberation as the assignment required, yet we were also in the process of it. And one of the things I think we realized is that even as we wanted to speak about it, we had to be in the journey, because our bodies are like the safety net or the covering of everything that will pour out to the world. So if we are sick emotionally and we perceive ourselves in the wrong way, how then can we be able to be women and be the best that we can be and fight for people's rights? It's one of the things I think we discussed towards the end of the course, is taking care of ourselves and having time to even rest. And importantly is, am I doing okay? So that even as I'm going to pour out to the world, it's coming from an overflow of goodness, and rest and peace and beauty. So it is true that it's important to think about body liberation and break free from the boxes. Me and Flo kept calling it boxes, a box for work with the ideals that I should be in the office, and then there's a box for church, or there's a box for when you go to a restaurant, there's a box when you're in public transportation. So it's important that we break free of those barriers and those boxes in order to be able to flourish in our different things. To be a great lawyer, you have to have confidence, but the confidence just doesn't come from waking up in the morning and being like, I'm a great lawyer. No, it's the simple things. It's, I'm beautiful, I'm worthy, I am good enough, I can do great things, all those wonderful statements that you say to yourself. Yeah.
If I can add to that, I think to come back to using our bodies as liberation, I think Libby is the incarnation of that. She uses her voice to speak up, and that's such an important part of why we do what we do. In our everyday life also, we are confronted with using our bodies either as tools for activism, or on the opposite side, for hiding. It relates to posture, but also to how we dress. And I think the purpose of what we put together in the end was to take all those boxes, as Libby has mentioned, and really just blur the lines and enable us to be ourselves and love ourselves in the way that we are, and try our best to, in any case.
Thank you both so much. Yeah, when you're talking about boxes, that's something that I can personally really relate to. So I thank you for sharing that. And Flo, what you said about, yeah, using our bodies as tools within social activism, but then we also use our bodies to hide from that. I think that's really interesting with our theme today, talking about body liberation, and then using our bodies to achieve that liberation or fight towards it. It's an interesting balance. So thanks for bringing that up. I would like to just now talk about this year's International Women's Day theme, which is a challenge to change. In light of your work on the song Perfect Imperfections, what does this theme mean to you? Libby, perhaps I can ask you first about what this theme, challenge to change, means in the context of the song.
I think the statement would be, we are challenging the boxes that women are put in for purposes of controlling them and for purposes of putting them in line. So we're challenging that. We're challenging those absurd standards that have been placed in our lives, so that our children will have a better experience than we do. You know, our children will grow up knowing that I can really be anything. Being the president is not a big issue. It's normal, you know. But at the moment, any woman president is like, wow, you know, we made it. So it's just being able to challenge that, those boxes that we've been given of perfection, and just so that women can know that they're human and it's okay to not be perfect. Yeah.
If I may add to that, I think one of the biggest challenges as well, at least I can speak for myself, is the boxes that I put myself in as well. And recently, talking about this event with my close friends and family, one theme that came up regularly is that the people that I admire the most and that I believe are the most beautiful around me actually put a lot of barriers on themselves. And this is with challenging ourselves also. And it's a very difficult work to look at yourself in the mirror and say to yourself, I am worthy, I am pretty, I can do this. And this is something that we really, all of us, struggle with, at least from what I've seen and from what I've heard. And it doesn't matter if they are model size, it doesn't matter if they, you know, look beautiful with red lipstick. Some of my friends and close connections really don't see their inner beauty. And I think that's what the challenge, one of the biggest ones, is also about.
Again, thank you both for sharing your insights on this question. I know for myself, we've had, just for the participants on the call leading up to today's events, we had a few meetings and discussions amongst our panelists and Lauren and I about this topic. And it was really great to just start talking about this. I think, Flo, what you said about having friends that, we all deal with this, and it's not necessarily something we talk about very openly. So it was really nice just leading up to have this space to talk and to listen. And actually in that context, this idea of learning and unlearning in pursuit of body liberation came up when we're challenging to change our perceptions and our work in this field. What do we have to learn and what do we have to unlearn? And maybe, Libby, I could pass it over to you to talk about that, because I think you were the first one who shared that phrase, learning and unlearning, and I'd like to share that with the group today.
Okay, so one of the things that happened with me is that I've always talked about loving oneself, like, for the longest of times. Even when I began like my work fighting for women's rights and talking about women's rights, I remember I would just talk about like beauty standards and all those things. And it's like been 4 years later, and I still find myself having those moments when I'm like, okay, so I'm not okay. and I need to change that about myself. It's simple things. A challenge is posed in my life, and that kind of shakes my identity. And I'll give an example. In January, because I teach children, I lost a student. Um, well, how I was treated kind of felt racist in the process, and kind of felt like how they were looking down on me. And so I remember that whole week, I was just going through an identity crisis. Am I not good enough? I'm a good teacher. I think I'm a good teacher. Like, I've never done anything wrong, you know? So I had to sit down with myself and be like, okay, here are the facts on the table, and this is who you are now. And they couldn't see that, and that's okay. That's not your problem, you know? You are good enough and worthy of opportunities and worthy to teach other children of different races, and that's okay, you know? But then that shook my whole identity for that period of time. So we are in this journey that never ends, you know. You, in the song, we talk about what is your obsession with perfection and what's your obsession with correcting every part of me, you know. At that time, I think Perfect Imperfections was for me and Flow before it was for everyone else. It was really us telling ourselves, yo, what's the problem? You know, why do you keep setting these standards for yourself? Why do you keep putting so much pressure on yourself? Yet we are adults, and, you know, we're empowered women, we're doing women's programs, but we still go through the same identity crisis. And one of the discussions we also had, I remember when we were coming up with the cover art image, is that I put a pregnant woman there. And it was so interesting to be like, yeah, pregnant women go through the same process. You know, you think you're okay, you get pregnant, and then you start again. You're enough, you're beautiful, you know. Life happens, you gain a bit of weight, you lose a bit of weight, and you go through the process again. So it's a whole process of just unlearning and realizing some of the toxic things that you've had and became part of you, and changing that. Some of the toxic cultural things we discussed in the class, different cultures that, like, I remember there was a country that said that when you're on your period, that you're not acceptable in society. There's a certain way you have to dress and act. You know, those are the things we are unlearning about our bodies and how our culture relates with our bodies, and changing that takes time. And so you keep doing it and over and over and over. I think I've answered the question.
Yes, you definitely have. Thank you so much, Libby. And actually, I would like to pass it back over to Amira, maybe to respond to what Libby has said, or just the general idea of learning and unlearning within the field of body liberation.
No, I completely agree with Libby. I think it's so important, learning and unlearning, because when we talk about bodies and body liberation, it's so personal. Like, we could talk about it as a theme, but it's extremely personal to each one of us over here. So unlearning is a lot harder, because even the things that are toxic to us, we kind of hold on to them. I sometimes give this example of like diet culture, right? Like, there are different diets coming up day in, day out, and the industry keeps changing them. And suddenly you wake up one day and you realize your entire life's been a lie, because none of them work. And that's a very hard truth to kind of face. So I feel like, with every essence of our bodies and the journey that we are taking with them, it's important to constantly like check ourselves and where we're at, and also check our own biases, because you have to keep doing that. You have to keep asking those questions to kind of move along. You have to keep asking, why am I not in this room? Who is not in this room? Why is my body not represented here? Why is that constant learning and unlearning has to continuously keep happening.
Could I add one more thing that I've just remembered I wanted to say? The other thing is, it's also difficult to unlearn if the perpetrators of your negative perception of yourself, or the people who keep putting those standards on you, are family or people who are really close. You know, the closest people hurt you the most. So I think even like a mother who constantly reminded you how you need to lose weight, or you need to gain weight, you know, or you need to put makeup, or you need to when you get out of the house, you have to dress up. There's a joke we keep saying in the house that when I leave the house and I'm going to the shop, I just go the way I am. But my brother would always dress up and would always like make fun of him why he had to dress up. But then we could have been perpetrators of that. You know, we could have been the ones instigating the pain and reaching a place where you realize that, oh my goodness, my husband or my wife is toxic, or my mother or father or uncle is toxic, and I need to cut them off for my protection. I think that's extremely hard. And that's the process of unlearning.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one more thing to what Libby said. She's absolutely right. And I think another person we can kind of add to that is ourselves. Sometimes the language we use with ourselves is toxic. Sometimes the way we talk about, and a lot of the unlearning sometimes has to happen within. Like, why do I say what I say in front of the mirror to myself? And that is doing more harm than it's doing good.
Yeah, I think that those are all incredibly good points, and this idea of learning and unlearning is undoubtedly a very long process, and one probably have to go throughout our lifetime. So I really appreciate the examples that you are giving, and talking about how we are doing this ourselves too, because it's quite a big challenge by the sounds of it. So it's amazing to have both of your insight. Before we finish this question, any final thoughts on this, the process of learning and unlearning, or using our bodies in social activism? I just want to leave the floor open if anyone has any final comments, or we can move ahead. Okay, great. So thank you to our panelists for sharing this sort of an intro discussion into body liberation, and then talking about Perfect and Imperfections, which of course is the song that Flo and Libby created together and developed together. And Libby has amazingly put together the sung version and the music video for this. So today we are hoping to go live with the premiere of the Perfect Imperfections music video, which will be released tomorrow. So I'm going to hand it over to Lauren. I think now we're going to try to share the video. We're having technical difficulties ahead of this call, so we're really hoping that we can do this. If we're unable to share the video, we will share the audio, but we'll try the video first and see.
Great. I think Libby's got it.
Mistakes. My perfect imperfections. Sit straight, hair down, mistakes. No smile, what's wrong? She's fake. Do this.
I'm so sorry, it's doing the thing again. So what we're going to do is just listen to the audio, and I hope that will suffice, but the video will go on YouTube tomorrow. Yes.
My perfect imperfections. Sit straight, hair down, mistakes. No smile, what's wrong? She's fake. Do this, do that, be brave. You almost. One day you might be perfect. Wear cleavage, short skirts, red heels, corsets, headscarves, lingeries. Be upbeat, quiet, know your place. You're almost. One day you might be perfect. wanna know, what is your obsession with perfection? And you know it's unattainable. What is your obsession with correcting everything about me? No, I won't let you change me, 'cause I love my perfect imperfections. I speak good things to my body, my soul, my mind. Your words are dead, I'm free. You won't bring me down, 'cause I'm beautiful, and I know it for sure. I wanna know, what is your obsession with perfection? And you know it's unattainable. What is your obsession with correcting everything about me? No, I won't let you change me, 'cause I love my perfect imperfection.
I don't know what's happened. We're having terrible technical issues, but it's okay.
No, Libby, it sounded great. I was able to hear it on my end, and I hope our participants were as well. As you mentioned, you will be going live with the music video tomorrow, and Hear My Voice Women's Network will be posting it, of course. So everyone, please tune in to see it. It's I wish you could see the video. It's really good. But it was beautiful to hear the audio just now. And I felt I could really listen and pay attention to the lyrics and the sentiments that you and Flo wrote, and about just, yeah, these unattainable standards and the words that are used in our everyday life. I think that it really resonated. So thank you for sharing that with us all. I'm not sure if anyone would like to share feedback at this time, but we really do encourage everyone to share your feedback in the chat box for Libby and Flo to see. I can see that there's already some amazing comments coming in, so thank you so much for that, everyone. I would like to ask Flo and Libby what you would like your listeners to take away from Perfect Imperfections. Flo, maybe we could start with you. What you would like people who listen to the song and watch the video to come away from either feeling or thinking about after they listen to the song.
Thank you, Evelyn, for that question. I think, as Libby said in the first, when we were writing it, it was kind of because we were struggling ourselves, and we kind of put it together to encourage, of course, others. I think the main takeaway is to stop striving for perfection always, because the minute you change everything about you that you wish you could change, it's still not going to be what you thought it was. And that day you'll want to achieve another perfect ideal, and it's so far away. And I mean, we're all beautiful in our own way, and I hope that that's what you guys can take away from it. If you have a bad day, if you're coming home and you just had a difficult situation at work, or anything really, that you can put on the song and feel loved, because we do.
I kind of wrote 5 points that I would like people to take home from the song. The first one is, always question yourself why you're striving for perfection. Is it that someone has been saying it too much for you? Is it a colleague who indirectly sets a standard for you that pushes you there? Question yourself every time you're pursuing perfection. The second thing is, counter that by speaking positive things. In the third verse, we talk about, I speak good things to my body, my soul, my mind. and your words won't bring me down. And I think that was important for us, me and Flo, is that we constantly speak wonderful things, as we said earlier, that we might be our worst enemies. Number three is check yourself if you are the person who's setting a standard that is unreasonable for someone else. And this for me was triggered a few weeks ago when my husband called me out. I said something that was not really nice, and I said it to someone about someone else, and he asked me, isn't it a double standard if you're asking people not to pursue perfection and then you're asking other people to have perfection in everything they're doing, so check yourself, because you could be a perpetrator or you could be the victim at any one point. It's the same thing as sexual violence. You always check yourself, am I the perpetrator or am I the victim, or am I just complacent and just watching things happening? The fourth thing is, the wonderful thing about these standards that women have been given in this society is it's cultural, it's traditional. And we've learned time and time again that culture and traditions change over time. The reason why we celebrate great women in history is because they were the best versions of themselves during the time that they lived, and that they did something and changed the course of history and for our betterment. It's the same thing. You were created and put on this earth that you may change the course of life. And so we have the ability to change what standards are put for women. We have the ability to break free of those standards. So are you going to take up the mantle or the challenge to destroy all the toxic standards that have been placed in our society? And then the last thing was, you need to identify what is beauty for me and what is perfect for me, because, and I was giving this example and I was having this discussion with someone about it, is if Libby loves herself in Kenya, when Libby goes to India, she will still love herself, even if the standards of what is a pleasing woman in India is different. I will still love myself. And then if I go to the States coming from India and I love myself, I'll still love myself in the States. But if Libby loves herself because people accept her in Kenya, the minute I go to India, I will need to change in order for me to be loved by the Indians. And then when I go to the States, I will need to change in order for me to fit into the standard for America. And then what happens is I get lost in who I really am. So set what standards are relevant for you and that you own them, so that it's not relative. Wherever you go, you are thriving. If you change jobs, you are thriving in your body liberation or your body standards, or what you perceive as beautiful and perfect for yourself. So that's what I hope people will take home. Yeah.
No, thank you, Flo and Libby, so much. Those are all such beautiful sentiments, and I really hope that I can take that home when I'm listening to the song. And I'm so glad we're having this discussion around it, because I think it's this deeper understanding of everything that this song is trying to achieve, and it's really nice to hear. I'd like to ask Amira this question as well. Sort of, we're talking about takeaways from the song, but Amira, do you have tips or advice for either practicing or promoting body liberation? Maybe for some of us who don't have such an amazing voice like Libby, or writing skills like Flo, what are some of the top tips or advice that you would give for doing this sort of activism?
Yeah, so I think I always say that they're checkpoints, because you need to keep checking in with yourself. And the first of those is challenging your privilege. So asking yourself, essentially, what resources and powers do I have as a result of my body? There'll always be more than some people and less than other people. And what resources and powers don't I have as a result of my body? As women, a lot of us have to a certain degree, we do have a lot of these obstructions. And you also have to constantly think about who's not in the room, like every single time. So For example, we're doing the Zoom meeting, and that means a lot of women who don't have internet connection can't be here, and their bodies can't be represented here. And just constantly asking yourself those questions, you start opening up those spaces a lot more. And you start listening and hearing about other people's bodies and kind of moving towards that liberation for everyone. And then secondly, challenge corporate agendas. You know, every time we see an ad, like whether it's for skin, making your skin lighter, if it's for making your waist slimmer, kind of challenge that and be like, I'm feeling some kind of self-hate right now. Whose agenda is that? Is that mine? I don't think so. I think it's XYZ who wants to make $1 billion off of me hating myself a little bit. You know, is it culture as well? So kind of challenge those agendas. Then thirdly, comparison. I say comparison kills. So I think comparison is really a structure of body shame, because you can keep being in that cycle. If you stop comparing yourself to 5 people, you'll find 5 others to compare yourself to. So really continuously ask yourself, oh, am I still comparing myself to other people as a way of measuring value or non-value? Like, am I deriving my self-worth from this comparison? Whether that's good or bad, it's just comparison just doesn't help you move forward. And then watch your language. And I see this not only in terms of how we speak to ourselves and what we say to ourselves, but also how we view other people's bodies. I mean, we can feel like we aren't fat phobic, but the minute you say something like that style of clothing doesn't work on a woman of that body shape, you are saying fat phobic words. You are kind of perpetuating some of those biases. And so continuously check yourself and watch that language, even how you speak to yourself. And then finally, I think vulnerability. It's spoken about. I think we all build shields around ourselves, and we don't really understand the power vulnerability has in like freeing us from some of these boxes and shackles. And I would say journal, if journaling is your way of getting some of your emotions out. Write music like Libby and Flo do. Find some way to kind of get some of your emotions out and get some of your real vulnerable self out, and also create that space to speak and listen to other people. So not only be vulnerable yourself, but create space for other people's vulnerability. And I think there is so much learning from just listening to other people share their body journeys. I mean, listening to Libby and Flo right now, I had 20 things crop up for me, and I feel like it must have been for other people as well. So I think if we want to reach some level of universal body acceptance and like genuine body freedom, we need to be doing this together. And I think vulnerability is a place to start at.
Great, thank you so much, Amira, for that advice. And I really appreciate the focus you put on listening too. I think that's something that I've really benefited from today's session, as well as our conversations leading up to it. And yeah, it's really just been an education, and it's made me think of things I wouldn't have otherwise. So thank you for sharing that. Libby or Flo, would you like to add anything or respond to any of the advice Amira has given? Okay, great. Well, I'm going to transition now into some of the questions that we received ahead of today's events from our participants. So everyone who is joining us today was encouraged, if they had any questions, to submit them ahead of time. So I've chosen some of the common questions from that registration process. However, if anyone who is tuning in has a question now, we do encourage you to type it in the chat, and we can see if we have time to get to that as well. So from the registration list, this does build off of that theme of advice that we were just talking with Amira, but one of our registrants wrote in and asked, is there one key piece of advice that you would have given to your younger self that would have better or earlier started you on the journey towards body liberation, despite the community or society that you were in at the time. So a piece of advice for our younger selves. Does anyone have anything they'd like to share in response to that?
I think I could share something. I think the amount of time I probably spent on trying to the amount of time I spent on trying to change my body or think about how I would fit into these body standards, and the amount of brain space and emotional space that whole thing took. I feel like if I could take that all back, I could probably have done so many things with that time. And I think it's constant from the minute you wake up to the minute you sleep. And I've really had to do a lot of work to kind of move away from that. So I think to my younger self, I would say, I wish you had started doing that sooner, you know?
I think mine would be in relation to being a plus size baby all my life and being plus size. I was always the plus size girl in the group. And I remember one of my greatest fears is that, will anyone ever love me as me, or do I need to lose weight, or during my wedding will I have to lose weight in order to find a gown, and I think that was the hardest process. And if I was to speak to my younger self, I'd just be like, honey, he's gonna love you. He will love every wrinkle, every fat area that you have, and he will adore it. Because now I know that I have found love that doesn't see my body as something that's gross or that it needs to change to be something else. And if if I could go back, I'd just tell her, by the way, relax, he's gonna come, you'll be okay. Yeah.
In my case, I think it would be more turning to outwards. Like in your whole life, you'll encounter people who will make you feel worth less, who will put you down for any reason, whatever their agenda is. It can be in a work environment, it can be in a friendship environment. And throughout high school, this was very hard as well. And I think if I could go back, the advice I would give would be to just let it go, like to not try to impress people who are not worth your time or your energy, and enable yourself as soon as possible to recognize these situations and walk away from them in the healthiest way possible. Of course, I don't mean run away from everything. Certain challenges we face make us grow too, but just like, do not put any energy into acknowledging thoughts that are anything other but loving and positive.
Great, thank you all so much for your advice. I think that was all incredibly poignant, and so thankful for you for sharing that. My next question came up in a few of our registrations, and that was about how someone might go about expressing their mind in a society or within an industry that's dominated by men without feeling judged or wronged. So in the context of body liberation, what are some of the ways we can express ourselves when we're feeling that we're surrounded by a patriarchal culture or community?
Good question. I think we're all still learning that.
Yeah, I think so. And but I think patriarchy is one of those things, it's embedded everywhere. And we're constantly learning ways that we are affected by it. But I think when it comes to beauty standards, I think challenging how some of it comes culturally, but some of it comes from the male gaze, and really challenging what beauty is from your perspective rather than that male gaze, is a way to really start removing some of those obstructions.
I think, and we had this discussion, I think, in the class, is patriarchy is such a big thing to fight. It's huge, but it takes little seeds that you plant. It's this those small nuggets of change that you plant. It's the simple things. It's, am I going to wear a weave because that's acceptable to the men around me, or am I going to wear it because I just think I look gorgeous in it? It's those choices. You generally attack patriarchy with the small things that you decide. And I had that challenge with the music video, because I had to shoot a part of it, and then I had just braided my hair. I normally make my hair in the house, and I just did something simple because I work in the house. And I remember feeling the need to remove my hair because there's a certain way music videos you're supposed to look, and I need to flatter myself completely. And I remember just fighting it till the night before we were shooting, and telling myself, I'm not going to change my hair because I actually don't want to change my hair. And it's the small things that you do, that I'm going to wear a dress that looks beautiful on me because it looks beautiful, not because they will like me if I wear it, or in the office, a certain person will be more pleasant to me, so it's just small nuggets of change, and you can do that for yourself.
Yeah, I just wanted to add another little thing. I think culturally also there are things which I can only speak for India and some areas in South Asia, but like body hair removal or things like that, where you really have to question whether you're doing it for yourself, or are you doing it because that is what is expected culturally to be beautiful. Threading your eyebrows, these small things that are just so embedded in, I mean, you turn 16 and you just like, I can't wait to go and do this for the first time. Like, you don't even think about it. And I think starting some of that thinking process in everything that you do is just important.
To that, like, because Libby mentioned to the little steps we take, I think one important thing is also to talk about it around you. Like, change starts in very small groups, by the individual, by you, by your friends who are going to talk to their friends and their family. And that's why Hear My Voice was such an important part of this journey as well, because we started to be this group of women. I think we were 12, Lauren, correct me, but and then all these 12 women went home and talked to their friends and family about it. And this will spur discussions around you. And that's something that has proven very useful in my environment. And I'm constantly challenging internalized misogyny, internalized thoughts that you have in relation to patriarchy, but also, as Libby has said, sometimes you're the perpetrator of thoughts that continue these boxes and that actually, close them off. So just talking about it. Thank
you all so much. Yeah, I really appreciate just the different ways that you were talking about this concept, because it is so big and it can be such an overwhelming challenge. And yeah, the amount of registration questions that came in with that just shows, I think, how much it impacts everyone, no matter where we're coming from. We're dealing with this in some way. So really appreciate your response on that. To close off our space today, I'm just going to ask a final question here that we received. And I think it's because it's on everyone's minds since past year of upheaval during the pandemic. So we had a question come in about, do you think that the COVID-19 pandemic brought us forward or set us back in terms of body liberation? We're always on our screens more. Is that a good thing because we're able to have conversations more, or has that been a bad thing because we're always looking at ourselves or looking online as a form of escapism? I'd love to get your thoughts on this.
I think I'll just start us off on that. I genuinely think it did both. I don't think it did one thing on one side, it allowed us to stay home and rest and face our demons. Okay. Because now you have to face the reality that, okay, so I don't have to put makeup to go out. So let me look at myself and love myself the way I am, There's this idea that COVID brought the idea that you can die very close. Like young people, we don't think we can die. We don't like think about it. And then so COVID brought the whole idea of questioning your whole existence and have you done enough? Can you do more? So it was good because it pushed us to challenge a few things that were dormant in our lives that needed challenging, but also it put us on TikTok throughout, on Instagram, and we're so focused on these standards that are being perpetuated, especially like by the social media influencers, like Amir was talking about the diets. Every time seeing keto diet in my timeline was very frustrating, and seeing girls working out in the house, I'm thinking, where do you get the time? So it takes being intentional also about what you're consuming. So if you need a break from Instagram, take the break. If you need a break from every social media platform, honey, do it. You don't have chains that have tied you to social media. So I think it did both. But also it made us realize that the things that we are watching affect us much more than we think. So COVID was a good and bad thing overall.
Yeah, I want to add to that. I think similarly, yeah, I also think there were pluses and minuses to the whole period. I think again, this is one of those areas that you have to kind of see the privilege side of it. So COVID also saw a high increase in domestic violence, in a lot of abuse, and really understanding that being cooped up, a lot of people were cooped up with their perpetrators, with people, and in areas that are filled with trauma. And I think that has been really, really hard, and most governments and people have not had the means to kind of leave those situations, and have been in very, very violent and unhealthy environments. And then I think, like Libby said, I think it was also a time where you and your body were alone a lot, without any of the noise. So I think it's a time to really identify what some of those challenges were, that you have with yourself and without any of the distractions, right? Like our life is just filled with things, and suddenly it was filled with just you, and a screen that had to be shut eventually. So I think it was also a time where a lot of people really questioned what their journey was, reconnected. Some of their disassociations with their body became, they started challenging that. And I think that has been really beautiful. I think another point that Libby was kind of talking about, social media, I feel like it's something that I didn't put in my 5 checkpoints, but I always say, I think you have to sometimes, to save yourself, sorry, I'm getting the word wrong, but like curate the world around you. And I think social media is one of those things. Like there is enough toxicity in your own life. I think block the people you don't need there. Follow accounts that help you and empower you. And really, we have enough demons already. I mean, try to create a few spaces that you can make that are safe and helpful, and help you. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you to all of our panelists today for your insight and your vulnerability being on this call, talking about this topic. I'm going to pass the floor over to Lauren right now for some closing thoughts.
Great. Thank you so much, Evelyn. And thank you to our wonderful panelists. And I definitely will leave the session with a lot to think about personally, and I'm sure everyone will. And something that really resonated with me, obviously we talked about so many different issues, but I really like this question of like, what advice would you give to the younger me? And I know that I would sit my younger self down and, give her a good talking to, but unfortunately, we don't have time machines. But we do now have that knowledge. And when we think about today's theme, which is choose to challenge, we now have a choice. And that is the choice to now challenge these systems that made us that 17, 18-year-old who had all these struggles and went through all these, as Amira said, you wasted so much time of your young adult life caring about what other people feel and thinking, well, should I wear this outfit? What will people think? Or am I skinny enough to be wearing this outfit? Can I get this job based on my hair? It was all just pointless, time wasted when we actually should be focusing more on important things like your friends or your family, or working harder towards your degree, or doing hobbies that make you happy. And so I really want to emphasize this. The power and the journey that we're all on is that I kind of welcome other people onto this journey. So all of our panelists, myself and Evelyn, I feel like we're on our own journey, and I envision this kind of like a train, we're going along and we're gathering people and supporting them and being like, it's okay, come on, let's go forward together in this. And so I hope that all of you joining us today can kind of get on our train of body liberation, and support other people in their journey, whichever stage they're at, if it's, if they're at the beginning or middle, and kind of as the panelists said, this is never going to be an end. We're continuing on this journey. And it really is about supporting each other as we go through. And that's how I believe we can really make change as well. So again, thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you to our panelists. And I'll pass it over to Evelyn, and we're going to share some of the links to the song and also to Amira's podcast.
Great, thank you, Lauren. Yes, so as we mentioned earlier, the music video for Perfect Imperfections will be released tomorrow on YouTube. So please keep an eye out for that. And then the audio is already available today, though, on iTunes. So Libby, I'm not too sure if you have a link at the ready, but if you do, we could share it in the chat box. And then we will, of course, be posting the video on our own Facebook account, Hear My Voice Women's Network, as soon as it is released. We mentioned that Amira is the founder and runs the Unmute Files podcast. This podcast brings on different guests to talk about their journeys in body liberation. And if this is a conversation